Good to start, right? Yes. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to MRSI's Wednesday webinar, season 8. Glad to have you all here. We're going to quickly get into the session. Before we do a little bit about MRSI, Sandesh, if you could just switch to the next slide. MRSI is a not-for-profit association of providers and buyers of research. It was established in 1988 with the intent of creating awareness of the industry among public and the government. The larger intent is for us to work as a community which can talk about professionals and engage in all the work that's really coming out of the market research industry. Yeah. So if you could just switch to the next. The Wednesday webinar is actually one such initiative where we bring to you all the power pack work that's happening in the industry. It's a committee which is run by all of the people you see on the screen. Amitabh Mishra, who's an independent consultant. Sundar Muthuraman, who's also an independent consultant and a marketing measurement. Sivakumar Somanathan, who's a consumer behavior consultant and runs his own consulting company called Cat. Vatsala Trivedi, who's Vice President at Third Eye. Uttara, I'm going to be a moderator. I'm an Associate Vice President at Third Eye. And Adya Sinha, who's Research Manager at Third Eye. Today, actually, we're here for a very exciting topic, and we have a very, very exciting with us, with a really power-packed set of speakers. We have among us Gauri Pathak, who's Country Service Line Head at Ipsos for healthcare as a larger department. We have Sidharth Chaturvedi, who's the CEO at Third Eye Integrated Services. We also have Charu Mullick, who's the Consumer Business Insights and Analytic Lead and takes care of the India subcontinent region at Haleon. And we also have Vijayshankar Menon, who's also National Pickleball Coach. The diverse panel should give you guys a sense of what are we looking at, and it is actually a really exciting topic, which is health and wellness paradigm, no longer a pill. I think what's really interesting about this space, and I think we're all looking at this around us, right? Every other post on social media is talking about a matcha or a Pilates or a pickleball. And I think it really got us thinking about what is really going on in this wellness discourse. Are we as a country, as a culture, changing in terms of how our orientation towards health and wellness is? And I think what we thought we would do together is really bring out this perspective and have a very rich panel who would sort of help us with this. Before we start, just small housekeeping rules. There is, for all the attendees, there's going to be a Q&A session which will happen towards the end. So you can post your questions through the session and we would take it up at an appropriate time. So we will be talking about this, and different panelists will be speaking about their parts as and when they come. Yeah. I'm actually going to start off with Gauri and let her sort of talk about what's really going on in this space and have her tell us what she's heard in all the work that she's been doing. Sorry, I don't think you're audible. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And welcome to my presentation. I'm going to be talking about the rise of conscientious health in India. As you know, Ipsos has a very well-established healthcare practice, and we do so much work in this area, be it pharmaceuticals, be it consumer health, be it technology in health, be it medical technology. So the insights that I'm going to be presenting today is based on a lot of work we have done. You will see a lot of numbers, obviously, because I'm representing a market research agency. You will see data from the Ipsos self-care survey, which we ran among 2,500 consumers in 2024, and also the Ipsos Global Trends report. Next slide. Next slide. So health, as we all know, is becoming increasingly holistic. Our research shows that most people feel they need to do more for their health, be it their physical health or their mental health. The focus clearly has shifted from simply living longer or yearning for longevity to aging better. So quality of life matters equally to them as much as longevity. And I think it's high time that people think about health in that manner. If you look at some of the statistics, the prevalence of diabetes, for example, in India is about 10% in adults, which is roughly about 101 million people, equal to population of some of the countries. We also have about 25 million pre-diabetics in the country. So they are at high risk of developing diabetes. If you look at cardiovascular diseases also, it is a leading cause of death among young people in India. So clearly there are signs there is a need for people to become more conscious about their health. Next slide. Sorry. The one before that, sorry. So in the survey, in the self-care survey, when we asked people the importance of self-care, and self-care is defined as looking after your health proactively, right? Almost everybody who we administered this question said that self-care is very important. So clearly, in terms of the importance, realizing the importance of self-care, how deeply people think about the concept of self-care, it is very well entrenched among Indian consumers. Next slide. Now we asked people a question, what according to them are habits that can contribute to good health, right? Now if you see what top there and across a lot of work in fact that we did, we see an increasing importance of sleep in the contribution of good health. So sleeping required hours was the number one contributor to good health according to people, followed by mindful eating, spending quality time with family, exercising regularly, etc. Now, if you look at some of the more preventative, I would say, practices about health, which is, say, consumption of nutrition supplements or taking adult vaccines or doing preventive health checkups, that ranked a bit lower. In fact, if you see at the bottom, vaccines really ranked low, preventive checkups ranked low, taking health supplements for general wellness was also only about 31% compared to mindful eating, family time, sleeping, etc. So this suggests that people prioritize lifestyle habits over long-term preventative care. It could also be a function of how much you spend on some of these lifestyle habits, right? For example, sleeping required hours doesn't cost too much versus doing a health screening. Next slide. We also wanted to understand the usage of digital to manage health. So we asked people, have you downloaded a healthcare app? And this is data for last 6 months. Only about 11% of the respondents said that they did download a healthcare app. So clearly, this market has a potential to grow. But if you look at the reasons why people downloaded a healthcare app, it was mostly to facilitate doctor consultation. There was also a percent of people who said they wanted to gain knowledge about health and nutrition, to manage mental health, to sleep better. Again, sleep came up here amongst the top reasons why they downloaded a healthcare app. Next slide. Now, so the question is clearly that what are barriers to usage of digital health apps? And fear of misinformation really top there. There is a fear amongst people about the reliability, the genuineness of content that is present in healthcare apps. Hence, it is very critical, very important to establish the credibility of information on digital health apps. Next slide. Apart from generally occurring conditions, we ask people about their skin and hair care products because we see this market as really growing. Healthy beauty as a market is growing. So we ask people about their attitudes regarding skin and hair care products, and a majority of people said that they preferred using products made from natural ingredients. So natural ingredients really dominate preferences in skin and healthcare products, with about 57% people preferring products with natural ingredients. Next. After a lot of indicators that we saw in growing consciousness about healthcare, we also found that majority of the people, almost 75% of the people, said that they find it hard for them to remain consistent on measures taken for personal health. So while the awareness is high, while consciousness is growing, 3 in 4 people actually say that it is difficult to stay consistent with personal health measures. And this represents the fundamental challenge in terms of health behavior, according to us. So, knowing what to do versus actually maintaining those behaviors in the long term continues to be a challenge among Indian consumers. Next slide. A classic example of that you could see here is the adherence while consuming supplements. So we know that nutritional supplements as a market in India is growing. Consciousness about active ingredients within supplements is growing. Post the pandemic, there has been a surge in consumption of preventive nutritional supplements. At the same time, we see that people skip doses very frequently. They are not remaining adherent. They don't take the doses daily. They may not refill either the prescription or the bottle or the strip. So most of the supplements you could see are barely able to touch about a 50% adherence in terms of consumption of supplements. Iron supplements, protein powders, which are very well known to consumers. I mean, they are mature categories still, are somewhere around 50% in terms of consumption. Next slide. In the Ipsos self-care survey, apart from a lot of information that we gathered, we also gathered information about BMI. And we found that on a sample of 2,500 respondents, about 44% were greater than 25 BMI. So they were either overweight or obese. And we are bringing this up really in the context of the growing awareness about obesity and the need to manage obesity in India. One is the growing consciousness about fitness, but also the launch of new drugs to tackle obesity, which are called GLP-1 drugs. Next slide. You would see again that perceptions relating to obesity are very, very strong in India. Majority of the people believe that being overweight or obese can put you at high risk of some serious disease. They also feel that being overweight is a disease in itself. If you see some of the campaigns by the new drug, they basically present obesity as a disease. There is a high level of resonance among Indian consumers that obesity itself is a disease. However, in obesity also we see that while people are conscious about everything, really staying consistent to fitness, to exercising, to maintaining a diet is a struggle among most Indian consumers. Next slide. This is a little busy slide, but what essentially it says is that the need to lose weight is extremely strong in India. We are number one if you see compared to any other country. This data is from the Ipsos Global Trends Survey. While the global average is about 63%, in India it is about 75%. And we truly feel that the new drugs to manage obesity, which are getting quite consumerized, are going to really correct obesity to a large extent. Next slide. While we talk about growing importance of healthcare and healthcare consciousness, we also see a slightly contradicting trend, which is the YOLO trend. You only live once, living in the moment. So if you see, India tops the chart when it comes to the belief in living in the moment. 78% agree with the statement that the important thing is to enjoy life today, tomorrow will take care of itself. So this represents also a significant increase from, we've compared this data versus 2013, where it was 59%. If you see 2024, there is a growing YOLO trend in the Indian consumer's mind. Next slide. So what we see really is a fascinating contrast between nihilism, that is the live for today mindset, and healthism, which is the pursuit of optimal wellness through disciplined choices. So despite this apparent contradiction, self-care continues to gain prominence, suggesting that people are finding newer ways to balance immediate enjoyment with long-term health. Next. So if I
Thanks so
were to
much,
take,
Gauri. So
yeah, if I were to take just three key points out of this. One is healthcare is becoming more holistic, creating ideal opportunities for proactive and positive health solutions. Consistency is a major challenge, and skepticism can develop anytime if products don't deliver on the promises. And digital tools have enormous potential but require reliable content to overcome fears of misinformation. Thank you.
thank you so much, Gauri, for these slides. I can talk for myself. There were too many slides where I could see my own behaviors play out. But I think what was really interesting and what stood out was the duality that you were also bringing out, right? That while yes, on one end, there's a lot of proactive behaviors at play, but there's also the difficulty in sort of sticking to them, or even the YOLO paradox. And I actually was got me thinking about what's really this like what is this duality all about? And I think our next speaker would be able to sort of shed light on this really well. So over to you, Sidharth. Would love to know if you have a perspective on what you think is really going on and why are we in this interesting duality when it comes to health and wellness.
Thanks, Uttara. I think since you spoke of duality, I would actually go to the extent of saying I don't think it's only about duality. There are multiplicities at play when you look at this space of health and wellness, and which really is going to be the nub of my piece in this session today. As Third Eye, we've observed generations and culture evolve over the last 30 years. Part of the cultural intelligence practice at Third Eye is actually looking at how codes shift with time, what shapes those shifts, and how they play itself out in consumer choices and behaviors, right? Health being one big space where we see the discourse really shift. I want to take us back, Sandesh, if you can go to the next slide, please. When it comes to Indians and health, the linkage of our value systems with well-being is not something new. Right from the time of Ayurveda, Unani, be it yoga, be it the triangulation of body and the larger system around me, it's always been closely linked to culture and values. However, as you go ahead, what you really see is that as values move, the meaning system around health, the motivation around health, and the codes around health have also shifted. And that's something that I will talk about going forward. Sandesh, if you can just move on. And one of the frameworks we kind of use when we do any kind of culture mapping is a framework called Schwartz. And what Schwartz studied were 84 different countries, and you can apply this as well to different cohorts, different communities, different subsections within society. And he mapped the dominant values that were shaping that particular segment behavior choices at that particular point of time, right? And if you look at this, the principle is that values shift. Values are not static. They shift when there are seismic events. They shift when newer generations come into the fold. They shift with exposure. They shift with globalization, and that's really what has happened to health as well. If you go back the way it was in the past, Sandesh, next slide, please. What health classically meant and what we see as going back to the past was the value system around us was about stability, was about safety. It was around a way of life which was about respect for authority. It was a space where status quo was important, and therefore what you saw around us was a space where collective was really, really important. You actually see this play itself out as you go along. Sandesh, if you could just go one slide down. Historically, role was very, very critical, right? Rootedness was critical, the collective was critical, which is why we looked up to figures of authority, be it the man of the house, the woman of the house. Fulfillment of that role to ensure that social order, familial order was maintained was something which was absolutely critical. And health, therefore, played a role in this, When you look at the meaning system of health, going to the next part of this, Sandesh, if you could just, health was defined by this desire for safety, stability, and ability to fulfill roles. The meaning of health was almost the risk avoidance mindset, which was I shouldn't fall sick, bimar nahi padna chahiye. And which is why the symbolism and the ecosystem around health, the meaning of health was driven by a white coat, the plus mark, expertise. It was something that was given to me by figures of authority. And my motivation of being healthy was if I fall sick, the social order around me will actually get disrupted. It will mean a setback to my role as father, my role as child, my role as homemaker, and I will actually end up impacting the collective around me. Which is why the methods of health, which you will see on the next slide, were much more around education, were prescriptive. Health was something I learned. Health was something that was taught to me at school, that was given to me from a very clinical vocabulary of you should do this, you shouldn't do this, you should eat this, you shouldn't eat that. And as a result of which, it came from a space of fear. It was also a space of avoidance. We all heard a time where people used to say, if we go to the doctor, he's going to find something wrong with me, and therefore I don't go for a investigation or a test. And that's really what health was at one point of time. However, as you move forward, you actually see that with globalization, with rising affluence, with digitization, societal values began to change. It was a space where, from very strongly collective, you actually started to see a little bit of the me emerge. And therefore, the discourse was about power, projection, status, achievement, competitiveness, getting ahead in life, my public image, a little bit of flaunt was actually beginning to come here. And what you actually saw in the post 90s era going forward was that the heroes that I looked up to were very high performance heroes because it was about status, because it was about individual effort. Achievement and accomplishment became very strong motivators at a larger life level. My anxiety was that I'll get left behind. My anxiety was that I will not get ahead of the other guy, which is why workforce and therefore productivity became very, very big key values. In fact, around the 2000s is where you saw the late 90s to 2000s, you actually saw the meaning system of health again change. Sandesh, if you can go to the next slide. The meaning was very strongly performance linked. Health meant my competitive ability to stay ahead. The poster children of who was considered healthy was someone who could play a sport, who actually became fitness icons. Health also became linked to my productivity at work in the kind of jobs that I did. We used to hear a lot of this conversation of if I fall sick, it'll actually impact my work. I'll have to miss a day of work, and therefore I will not be able to get ahead in life. Which is why in the methods that you saw at that particular point of time, this was the era where all health symbolism and semiotics, as well as the language, was about winning. It was 5x more measured. It was all about the charge. It was all about the stamina to win. This was the era of taller, sharper, stronger. This was the era where maximizing performance became a very big calling card for anything to do with health. Cut to today. Today we are actually witnessing, like Gauri was also saying, right, an interesting duality, or to borrow from what Uttara said, multiplicity, because we're seeing a cultural shift again take place thanks to the onslaught of social media, thanks to Gen Z today becoming consuming audiences, where they're actually spending and driving discourse going forward. In fact, a lot of the categories we see, the younger people today shaping narratives of choice on a daily basis, which is about exploration, which is about playfulness. There is a little more freedom. Pleasure and hedonism and stimulation have become very big values. Yes, status and showcasing continues to hold sway. However, what you see emerging is a sense of excitement and a slightly more down-aged narrative in multiple categories. And this actually, if you see, Sandesh, if you could go to the next slide, has been fueled by social media, because it's all about the experience of things. Today, there is a sense of hyper individualism, which is creating personalization, which is creating customization. Today, I pick and choose which influencer I want to follow based on what I find inspiring about them. The way I connect with the collective is through a community. It's also a space of engaging with others who are of a like-minded mindset, who have the same passions as me. There is no single template of what is achievement. There is no single benchmark of what is considered in that sense healthy. And which is why if you look at the meaning system of health, health today has become about not just how my body is or the absence of disease. Sandesh, if you can go to the next slide. It's actually a 360-degree expression of my life force. It's actually about doing and feeling young. Milind Soman is great, and he's become a hugely aspirational figure when in the way he does his workout. Soha Ali Khan at her age is posting her gym workout video. Somebody else is posting their diet. It's actually about the kind of life energy I have. Health is also a way in which I'm building a better version of myself, not just in terms of physique, in terms of how I engage with the world around me, communities, all the games that we see around us, the kind of sports that we are playing. Mental health and self-care, like we also saw in Gauri's piece, is becoming a big buzzword here, because all of this combines together to give me the kind of vitality that I need to be present and experience life the way I need to live. What this results in as a result is health tonality has actually become far more playful. It is not just serious gravitas anymore. It's got groove along with that gravitas. There are much lesser don'ts, there are much lesser restrictions. It doesn't mean a diet does not necessarily mean deprivation. There is a greater room for myself. If you look at brands like Cult Fit, the matcha phenomenon or the matcha trend that we see around here actually tells us that you don't have to choose between fun and health. You don't have to choose between taste and health. You can actually have both, because the language has become easy, the language has become much more casual. It's a space that allows me to enter, pick and choose, curate the way I need to curate, and therefore more personalized experiences of health is what is something that we see going around us. Another big shift that we see as part of this discourse is the integration of technology. Today I have wearables, today I have apps to measure every aspect of health, my diet, how much I've slept, how much screen time I've had, how much water I have drunk. It's also a much more younger and contemporary narrative, because it becomes a part of this hustle life that I lead. And therefore, I'm constantly on the move. And therefore, when I have this device on my wrist that sends me the right signals, is also a way in which I'm keeping tab in sync with my on the go lifestyle. And all of this, therefore, is what we as culture observers are calling the FMCGification of health. There is a convergence and a blurring of boundaries between what was classical FMCG and health categories. Health is today borrowing in terms of optics, in terms of the language from FMCG. And there are multiple brands that you'll see on the next slide, where it's almost as if health is tempting consumers in through a more colorful language, through the language of flavors, through sensorial amplification. Even the kind of semantic and semiotic is buzzy, it's young, it's lively, it's exciting. And it truly is a very exciting space as observers of consumers, as well as health marketers, to be participating in this shift and watching the kind of action that's going on. Before I close, I actually want to just leave one last thought on the parting slide, which is that while I have spoken about three discourses, it's not to say that everything is moving en masse and it's a shift that is happening in a large segment. The reason why you also see the kind of contradictions and multiplicities that Gauri spoke about was that these are all discourses that are running in parallel. Some are small and likely to shrink, some are very dominant and continuing to be mainstay, some are visible only in younger audiences and slightly more niche audiences, which is why there are all these interlinkages, and it's almost like a tapestry where you have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So that really is what I wanted to leave you all with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sidharth. This actually was very, very enlightening because I think it allows us all to sort of see the movement and the trajectory we've all been on. It actually was making me wonder, and the last slide that you put out was really closer, right? Because it made me realize and think of what you said, right? I mean, when FMCG brands are getting into health, I wonder what healthcare brands are doing. And I think that's also where our next speaker, Charu, could shed some light as somebody who takes care of all the business at consumer work, at least at Haleon. Charu would love to know how, as a healthcare brand, are we navigating these shifts and what do you really think is going on?
Thank you so much, Uttara. And rightly said, actually, there is a new term that is getting coined right now, which is called FMCH, which is actually an amalgamation of consumer healthcare and FMCG. So our company is actually, and Haleon is one big example of where we are calling out fast-moving consumer healthcare, where we continue to be seated in healthcare, but what we are actually doing is that picking up the codes of FMCG and trying to consumerize healthcare for the consumers. So, taking lead from where Gauri and Siddharth talked about, from pills to purpose, is what I'm talking about. Though Siddharth talked about a far more long-term phenomena in terms of how health has actually taken shape in the last few decades, I would talk about a little more the last 5 years, because I think one thing that we have noticed is that the health paradigm actually got accelerated far more in the last 5 years. And this happened because COVID was a big inflection point for the consumers. Prior to COVID, people actually led a very, very idyllic past. And even when they were talking about health, it was far more reactive. There was almost like a tomorrow where I can start practicing health. People were careless about the lifestyle they were leading. There were times when, they were indulging and believing that, I can try and curb my indulgence tomorrow. And therefore, the entire attitude towards health was a little careless. But when the COVID came, it actually almost was like a wake up alarm for everybody. It became very overwhelming. It was high anxiety. In fact, all of us experienced that emotional upheaval during that time where everything was restricted, the movement was restricted, the interaction, social interactions went down. And there was a very, very strong, deep rooted anxiety, but it also led to a very, very strong uh, emergence of awareness of what is the importance of health in everybody's life, and people actually started becoming aware. They started reading, they became alert, they started talking about practicing things which will help them build immunity and avoid infection. But India being India, the minute everything started stabilizing, when the life came back to the normal, the some of the things did go back to the normal sector, but health still continued to stay a priority. And I would just pick up the dichotomy that both Gauri and Siddharth talked about, that it is still a dichotomy because we do see certain segments of the consumers taking health as a priority, whereas there are certain other consumers who still continue to be far more reactive in their approach. And that is possibly not defined too much by the socioeconomic graph, but socioeconomic strata, but lot to do with the consumer mindset. If you have in your mindset become a little more proactive, then you're becoming far more conscious about the choices that you are making. But overall, health did become a priority for people, and people started practicing health in their own small ways. So, moving to the next slide, what we uh, Sandesh, what we saw was that consumer behavior also went through a significant change. Wellness gained attention. It was not just about health. If people started talking about the terminology that came up was wellness, which was far more about holistic wellness, which is physical, mental, emotional, social, every aspect of my living actually started being openly acknowledged. There were a lot of things that people did not in India talk about mental health, but COVID actually gave a segue to the consumers where people openly started acknowledging that health is not just about being healthy in terms of being not falling ill, but it is far more about being completely well. From curative, it took the lens of preventive. The younger audience who believed that they were invincible, they also started doing things, and we have seen that in the Siddharth's presentation, that how so many new brands are coming up, cult fit. There are so much enjoyable ways of practicing health, which the younger consumers are these days adopting. The other end, what we saw was the older consumers who were earlier not talking about the fact or not acknowledging it openly that I have diabetes, I've got lifestyle problems. They also started talking about or starting focusing a lot more about their pre-existing vulnerabilities. And this actually led to the openness to adopting new brands, new behavior, which were addressing health needs. So what is really talked about is that there became an elevated mindset for the consumers to know better, to choose better, to feel better. And what we really as an outcome, what we believe is that what it gave birth to is a functional wellness, wholesome wellness, and far more informed wellness for the consumers. If I move to the next slide, what it led to was different kind of new need states that started cropping up, and even the definition or the codes of holistic well-being got redefined. People started talking about how I need to practice wellness in terms of on-the-go convenience. People started talking about I want health to be customized as per what I need. Is there a way I can have personalized health and nutrition plans which are only for me? People started talking about that I can't stop working, but I have to continue working. But is there something that can help me with everyday energy, everyday movement, which does not stop me from doing what I'm doing, but rather works as a catalyst in helping me do things in a much better way. Mindfulness and mental health became very, very critical again. Physical fitness and performance, which was earlier limited to a very, very small section of the consumers, maybe gym goers or people who are conscious about going for a morning walk, now started becoming far more democratized, where everybody in their small ways, started practicing health. We've had consumers coming and talking about, even people who are in the villages, rural consumers, we've had them coming and talking to us about the fact that, I actually make it a point to take a 10-minute walk in the morning. There are housewives who are talking about that, now I actually log in and actually there are yoga sessions going on. So when I get free during the day, I actually try and practice yoga. Then there are online classes available where I can actually subscribe to them. Natural and plant-based, which was always a very, very cultural code for India, became far more prominent, where safe for me became critical. So we saw a shift back to the natural and plant-based uh, cues. Mindful eating and gut health. Gut health is one trend we have seen really exploding. People are no longer talking about that if I have a stomach problem, I will do this. People are actively proactively taking care of their gut health. And somewhere there is also a belief, that gut is the center point of everything that you do. And if your gut is healthy, you will otherwise continue to remain healthy. So that's become very, very critical for the consumers. Holistic and relaxed sleep. Again, this is something which earlier used to be taken for granted, now has again got attention. People believe that if I do not have, so it's not just about that I've had 7 hours of sleep, but it is also about how well I have slept, whether I have slept peacefully, and do I wake up fresh. These are the kind of codes that people are talking about. And in addition to that, what we've seen, and which Sidharth also talked about, is that how constant monitoring and management of health is being done by the consumers these days. So whether it is your health apps, whether it is your mobile, whether it's your smartwatch, each of these devices in their lives is actually giving them a segue to be able to monitor everything that they are doing in terms of their health and get some kind of a scorecard on it, that how are they performing on it. The new brands and the categories actually took inspiration from all these changing codes and all the changing consumer behaviors. And of course, brands have leveraged them to drive innovations, and new categories have come up using different vectors in terms of being far more relevant and making themselves far more consumer friendly. Some examples for you. Some of the brands which have actually tried to cash upon on-the-go convenience, holistic and relaxed sleep, or constant monitoring and management. Some of the levers that they have tried to leverage to address these needs are formats, benefits, science and tech. Some examples and some close to home examples I can talk about is the fact that Chewy Bites, which is on-the-go acidity solution, that is one of our homegrown brands and formats. So we actually launched a in a fun way, which is totally targeted at youth and on-the-go acidity solution. Melts is another brand that we have talked about and we have seen that, which actually gives you, it's a melt format, you put it on your tongue and it melts, and but it is supposed to be a multivitamin, or even it has different ingredient plays which will address specific health need states for you. There are people who have now started subscribing to apps like Calm, which actually helps them to meditate, to sleep better. There are brands who have actually moved on to, uh, uh, talking about specific ingredients, melatonin, which are the formulations that help people sleep better. Then, in addition to that, what we have seen, especially for the older cohort, earlier they would always run to a doctor to get their vitals checked. But now most of the houses that we go and check, most of the consumers seem to have some kind of either a BP machine in their house, or they would have a sugar machine in their house, which they use on almost like a daily basis to monitor their BP, their sugar levels, even weight is something that has always been there, but it's become far more prominent now. Going to the next slide, please. Personalized health and nutrition has also caught attention, and like we were talking about earlier, that there are a lot of apps, a lot of brands which have come up now in the market which talk about personalized health. There are people who want health to be practiced their way, and therefore they're looking at personalized solutions. Now personalized solutions could mean that there is a certain kind of a benefit that I'm seeking. So for example, and I'm taking inspiration a lot more from the personal care space, but that has also went to the wellness space, where people talk about the fact that, oh, I'm losing hair. So there are brands which are talking about biotin, collagen. So there are personalized need states, and you have solutions which are available from a personalized space perspective. Another example from our own Haleon family is Ardex Muscle Care. Now, this is a new brand that has just been launched. And the difference between the standard topical solutions and this one is that this actually talks about how you can address muscle care. You've had a long day, you're tired, and you're actually feeling fatigue-based pain or muscle spasm. This actually helps you release that, and it's focusing far more on a need state, which is a muscle care, especially for the working professionals. Then, of course, we have talked about brands like Cultfit and other brands which talk about physical fitness and performance. There are new age brands like Centrum Recharge, which have come up, which talks about instant energy, that talks about how and it's a very, very simple, accessible pack of about rupees 10, where you just mix it in water and it gives you instant energy, targeted at kids, targeted at people who are into workouts, and even regular people like us. There are new categories which are entering the market, especially categories like patches, which were not there earlier. Not just the healthcare brands, but even personal care brands and the FMB brands have taken inspiration from this wellness trend, and they have also now not limited anymore to just the indulgence spaces. There are brands like Organic India, which have actually launched a lot of ingredient-based solutions, which are totally towards health and wellness. There are brands like Tata, which have recently launched kombucha as one of the juices, which is taking again inspiration from something that people use in their daily lives to try and improve their gut health. Goodbug is another brand, which is a D2C brand that we've seen that, which is talking a lot about how you can improve your gut health, and which finally leads to an end benefit of weight loss as well. Not just that, even brands like ID is actually nothing but a batter, which is a idli dosa batter. Even they have moved into the direction of talking about how their pre-mixed batter is giving you better health because it has got a health code along with it. So we actually see different brands playing up the need states in a different way, but what they are using as levers is either benefits or ingredients or science or some form of format innovation. So these are some of the examples, and there are many and multiple, but what I want to just leave a thought with you is that it's no longer FMCG, it is no longer consumer healthcare. There's an amalgamation of fast moving consumer healthcare, what we believe in. Health is no longer just a phenomena which is just limited to the top affluent. It is becoming far more democratized. So with that, I would like to.
Thank you so much, Charu. I think it's so interesting. I mean, we're also a lot of us are end consumers of these brands, and truly life has become easy when you have a kombucha flavored drink, which is giving you so many benefits. I think what really stayed with me was the fact, and this was something Mr. Sidharth also touched on, which was this whole idea of playfulness and pleasure and indulgence, and you also touched upon it, which seems to be now the wave which is sort of defining how brands are sort of launching themselves, be it in the form of formats, ingredients, flavors. And I think this fun and play is also extending itself into the physical fitness space. And I think that's where my next speaker, and Vijay, I'm going to welcome you, but I think that really like one of the biggest rage right now is pickleball. And we really thought it'd be good to have a perspective come from you as someone who's national pickleball coach to tell us what is really going on. Why is everyone going and playing pickleball? We need to know this from you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Uttara. So before I start, I would like to quote, interestingly, few of my fellow panelists made some interesting points about health. So Gauri was speaking about the habits about contributing to good health. Top four qualities were spending quality time with friends and family. Second is exercising regularly. Third was managing stress. And fourth was outdoor activities. So these are the points that Gauri mentioned while she was speaking about the top four habits to contribute to good health. And she made another point about in India, there is 75% need for people to lose weight. Okay, so that's a huge number. And Sidharth made an interesting point that the motivation to stay healthy is to not fall sick. That was very interesting when I was hearing him speak. So all of these, get me to the sport called pickleball. And when I play the sport called pickleball, I think all of these are answered. And I'll tell you how and why. And why, like you asked me, why pickleball is growing so much in India and why it's the craze. But before we get there, let me start a little bit of the background introduction of the sport. So the sport was introduced in 1965 as a backyard family sport by a family of uh, three army fellows who were playing in their backyard, and they just decided that they wanted to start this game, and they named this game after the dog Pickle, and that's how the game was named as Pickleball. But now today, as we speak, there are 70 countries who are participating in the sport at the international level, and the kind of sport has gone from a backyard game to the overnight global sensation. It's kind of crazy, the growth of pickleball in the world, and especially in India. So, can you please move to the next slide, Sandesh? If you see, pickleball is gaining popularity as we speak about. At least 1 to 4 courts are made every week in India, and estimated 25,000 players are actively playing in India across 20 states. So pickleball started gaining popularity in India since 2018 and predominantly after COVID. But the sport was introduced in India in the year 2008 by Mr. Sunil Valavalkar, who had bought the sport from the US to India. At that time, there were not too many takers, but slowly the sport got popularity, and now 20 states, and as we speak, at least there are 25, more than 25 states who are playing pickleball in India at the state level and at the club level and school level. Recently, pickleball has also been recognized by the Ministry of Youth and Sports Affairs, and it's going to be very soon included into Olympics in the coming years. So there's just so much more to learn in the game, and improve as Indian contingent to the Olympics. Moving to the next slide, please. Now, why pickleball is important and how it helps you to stay healthy. Now, if you see, the pickleball is played with a plastic perforated ball on a badminton sized court and light tennis. So it's a mixture of three different sports: badminton, table tennis, and uh, tennis. So what you do is, when you play pickleball, there is not too much of uh, physical stress on the human body. The joints are pretty safe. It's very easy to learn. It's all age inclusive. So there are categories from 10 years to 70 years. All these age category can play pickleball. It is very friendly on the body. At the same time, it helps you build cardiovascular fitness. One single hour of pickleball can burn around 400 to 600 calories, uh, depending on the stage or depending on the difficulty that you're playing at. So when I play, I at least burn around 1,000 to 1,200 calories in an hour because it's a little more intense pickleball. Now, it not only helps you support your physical health, but also mental health. Like as Gauri was talking about, you know, going with your friends and family out and playing outdoors. It's a great mental booster. Now, shifting. Usually, what's happening is when people start playing pickleball, they start playing casually, and slowly they want to shift into serious training and they start competing. So now you would see a lot of corporates are investing into pickleball. A lot of corporates are uh, coming up with their teams, their pickleball leagues, and they're spending a lot of money on pickleball. At the same time, India is also participating in pickleball at the international level and creating a lot of players in the tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, and tier 4 cities. So pickleball is gaining popularity everywhere across India. Now, what is happening with the health related aspect of pickleball is when you start playing pickleball for the first couple of weeks, you improve your cardiovascular fitness. In the next 3 to 4 months, you improve your muscle fitness, and in the next 7 to 8 months, you start decreasing the injuries that you have. So when you play pickleball with a coach who's assisting you, the chances of injuries are very low, and your cardiovascular fitness goes really high. Can we go to the next slide, please? Now you would see the majority of players of pickleball in India are youth, and if you see the adults, 30% of youth is from 15 to 30. Sorry, 30% of players are from 15 to 30 years, 40% is from 30 to 50, 20% are seniors, and 10% under kids. So this will actually tell you the inclusiveness of the sport and how this sport has become a multi-generational sport over the years. It's gone from a backyard sport to a very serious competitive sport in the last few years, especially post-COVID. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, now what is happening is currently the pickleball has been, they have included in the Sports and the Ministry of Sports and Authority of India has included pickleball in their games, and we are going to soon include pickleball in the national games as well as the Olympics. So we have to wait and watch how India is going to, participate in pickleball at the highest level. This is definite. So the sport pickleball is definitely helping us keep ourselves healthy. So with my, I would like to conclude with this point that how pickleball is not only a sport but it's also a social game where it involves fitness as well as family time and friends, so that it improves the overall fitness of a person. And pickleball, being age inclusive, being gender inclusive, it's more than an exercise. It makes the whole sport enjoyable. So I would like to close my talk with that the entire sport pickleball is not only making you healthy, but it's also making you enjoy your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vijay. I think these were very insightful statistics to tell us the extent to which the sport seems to be growing, and it certainly is beyond just the trend on social media. Clearly, it's sort of going up. I mean, Olympics is I think, a great place to be in. At this point, I'm actually going to open the forum for some questions. So the audience, if you guys have any questions, to post in. I actually can see some questions. I'm going to start by asking the entire set of panel. I think one of the questions that we've seen is, and this is, I think, much more for Charu, is with so much shifting in the discourse around health and wellness, how does a brand like Haleon or any other legacy brand sort of find the balance between trends and the current reality of consumers, right? How do you sort of balance the two? Because it can be very tempting to get pulled into the trend, but at the same time, how does one find that balance as especially legacy brands which have stood for the kind of credibility that they have?
I think the answer is actually in finding the right balance, because there are certain things that a brand obviously stands for, especially say legacy brands like Iodex. There are certain brand codes which they already stand for. And yes, there are emerging trends and need states which are coming from the consumers. So what we try and do is marry the two aspects, which is that is there a stretchability of the current codes of the brand into the newer format, if that's possible? If that's not possible, then obviously innovation becomes the route to try and take the codes of the brand forward, but that gives you the right or the license to address a new consumer need, which is based on the new trends that one sees. So innovations and the extensions or the getting into new adjacencies, those are certain ways in which we try and marry the two aspects, which is stay true to the brand codes, plus try and stretch the brand to a level where it meets the new consumer need states. Having said that, it's also important to ensure that, the brand has a right to stretch. That's very, very critical. Not every brand would have the right to stretch or right to extend itself into a newer format. So that lens also needs to be taken care of when we are thinking about how do we stretch the brand to a newer format. So it's a balance that one needs to look at.
Yeah, yeah, and I think rightly said. The next question that we have is actually for Sidharth. It's a question which, so I think what we saw, Sidharth, was very beautifully the way the culture codes are shifting, but is it a pan-India phenomena, or is it something which you see manifesting in certain cohorts? And the follow-up to that is where do you see the access consumer sort of then come up? Are they still reflecting this shift?
Yeah. So I think, again, in any kind of culture discourse, right, the degree and direction of shift will change because a lot of the shapers of the shift are exposure, are internet, are global brands coming in, are what I see around me on social media, etc. Right. So naturally, by virtue of that, the more exposed, the more aware I am of all of these things, the degree of change as well as the speed of change will see itself much more pronounced in those cohorts, which is not to say that the other cohorts will not change at all, right? We've seen this time immemorial. It's only a question of pace. It's not a universal, like I even ended my session with, it's not a universal everyone in India is in the top part of that framework, top left part of the framework, or everyone has left the bottom right behind. So that's definitely to answer the first part of your question. The second part of the question, in terms of where does the access consumer lie, or, and by virtue of access, I assume you mean that's a proxy for a socioeconomic, lower socioeconomic strata consumer, right?
Yeah.
Again, in fact, in all the work that we're doing with, whether you call them access, whether you call them lower SEC or NCCS, or you call them bottom of the pyramid, again, it's not a one size fits all. There are access consumers to be found in the middle of Bombay, Gurgaon, Bangalore. There are access consumers to be found 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers off here. They're all going to be different in terms of the way they respond to all of this stimulus. A large part of, for want of a better word, the peri-urban or rural access consumer continues to be in the bottom right part. You will still hear them say, if nothing is wrong with me, why do I need to go to a doctor? Why do I need to do, if everything is okay, it's fine. Because their reality is that responsibilities are high. The reality is there is a collective to be taken care of. The access consumer in the urban areas may possibly be in the middle, and it's actually an intersectionality of where I am, my age, my life stage, my exposure levels. So yeah, I think it's really all of that that determines where I lie in this movement.
Yeah. Another question I can see in the audience is for you. Where do you think we're headed then? If we're right now in the top left, where are we then headed? What do we expect next?
Yes. So actually, if you look at it, all the values move in a circle. So and just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, since we don't have the framework right now in front of us, from exploration, excitement, and freedom and playfulness, the values actually shift to a more transcendental purpose, universality, planet, sustainability kind of conversations. And you're already beginning to hear that come up from a health and wellness paradigm as well, in the very, very evolved, affluent, well exposed, well traveled, almost the global youth today. That is also looking at health does not mean, or wellness does not mean good for me, it also means good for the planet. So making clean choices, plants like Charu spoke about. I think these are all also spaces where it is moving to that direction, which is known as universalism in the framework of values.
Right. And one last question, and we'll close the session. This is much more for Vijay, but Sidharth, Charu, Gauri, feel free to pitch in. Is with pickleball, I mean, we saw the statistics. What makes this much better, or at least so much more popular than all the conventional sports. There's also paddle coming up. So what do we think is really behind the popularity of pickleball? I mean, the fact that it has grown is very, very clear. But what do you think at an underlying level is causing this sort of popularity to grow? That a tennis or a golf or a badminton has never managed to do. It's just for, yeah.
I think the most important factor is it is all age inclusive, and the rules are easiest to pick up, and the game is very easy to
Hmm.
play. But I always tell
Hmm.
everybody that the game is easy to play but very difficult to master. So people start getting addicted to it because it's the court is smaller, it's not too intensive when you start playing pickleball, and you start enjoying the game the moment you start from day one. What makes it more interesting is the most important point is the game is very enjoyable. I would recommend all my fellow panelists to go and try it out. And if you really want to start playing pickleball, just get in touch with me. I'll definitely get you on the court, and I'll explain you why it is so interesting and addictive. I think the number one point is you start enjoying the game from day one. The moment you start holding the paddle and the ball hits your paddle and you're on the ground, you enjoy it. I think that's what it makes more enjoyable throughout all ages.
Yeah, well, I think this was a fabulous session because I think all of us are taking back so much more than what we came in with. And I'm sure we can all place our behaviors and why we're doing what we're doing in the health and wellness space very well. I'm going to quickly close the session by announcing the 33rd session and version of the MRSI research seminar, which is happening over 11th and 12th September. These are 2 Power Pack session days with endless learning. Registration will open soon, so hope to see you all there. And thank you so much for joining in today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Uttara.
Thank you. Thank
Same
you.
here. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sidharth, Charu, Gauri, Vijay, for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.